49ers game day. Some shit's happening. It's out of control out here, Jake. Inflation has run amok in the National Football League. We got guards going for $20 million a year, like it's the NBA or something.
I love it.
Defensive tackles getting life-changing money. And we have a San Francisco 49ers team that isn't really doing anything. It's 2:30 Pacific time, daylight savings time, here on the West Coast.
Yeah, that messed me up. I'll be honest. I got a little messed up by that.
This morning was not very much fun. My daughter, who's 1.5, handled it like a champ, was up at her normal time, and I'm eating it. I was eating it. So, we persevere. The things that we do for content like this. Okay, let's just go over what it is we already know, and in particular, what it is that the 49ers need to do. Let's start with the second part of that. Let's start with what the 49ers need to do. The news yesterday, and it was, I don't know, would you qualify it as surprising, Jake, that they cut Eric Armstead?
No. I mean, we talked about this, right? I mean, we said Armstead him and Debo, would be the guys to go, right? Yeah. Maybe Debo not in a trade this year, but Debo's a guy where you don't want to touch his money. You didn't want to touch Armstead's money. But I mean, it sets you up where I assume it's going to be a post June 1st cut.
It has to be. Fiscally.
Otherwise, it doesn't make any financial sense. But I think what they're going to do is use that money, try and get a cheaper defensive tackle, go elsewhere. And apparently they just signed Leonard Floyd to a 2-year, $20 million deal.
This is the 49ers.
Yes.
Okay, so there's your defensive end right there. Leonard Floyd, 2 years, $20 million. And that makes a lot of sense. I mean, I know he's been with Buffalo recently. Is that right? But he was a Ram for a stretch there. Basically, anyone who's played for the Rams can play for the Niners, and anyone who's played for the Niners can play for the Rams.
Exactly.
They seem to have a thing going between the two of them. I don't mind Floyd. I don't mind Floyd at that price. That is the Chase Young region. And Floyd's fine. His best football is probably behind him, but he's a pro. Yep. He's somebody who will, set an edge. He'll give you 2 downs. Probably not 3 anymore.
He's got 10 sacks a year for 4 straight years.
Yeah.
That's worth something. But I kind of feel like it's a guy where, there's rumblings. I think Mike Silver was talking about the fact that they might want Danielle Hunter, and maybe they just got priced out of that range. Totally. Leonard Floyd for $10 million a year. I think they're like, all right, this is a guy who can play football, knows what we're going to ask of him, and we'll get it done. I think 2 years, 20, fine. The markets are going crazy, so I think that's a pretty reasonable price.
Bryce Huff, who's a player we were on with Larry Krueger a couple days ago. He was a interesting enough player, more of a project than somebody that was a bona fide stud. But you could see the upside. Undrafted guy out of Memphis in I think 2020, maybe 2021, kind of broke out as a strict pass rusher, like a 3rd down, 2nd down long guy for the Jets last year. He was a name that made some sense. He got 3 years and $51 million freaking dollars. So
it's insane.
If we're talking about getting priced out of the market, there's your market. That means Danielle Hunter is worth more than 20, without question. And this is kind of the point that I wanted to get to here. I was a little bit surprised that they cut Armstead. I don't mind the move at all in a vacuum for all the reasons that we've talked about a million times, right? You weren't going to be able to trust him this year. Probably this would have been the last bit of good football you could have gotten from him. And I don't think they thought they were going to get it from him. I had no problem with them coming in and saying, take a pay cut. I have no problem with Eric Armstead wanting to test the market. I don't think it's going to work out for him, but I have no problem with him wanting to test the market. Fair play to all, especially if they do a post-June 1 designation, which if they don't, they're morons. I don't like saying stuff like that usually, but they're morons if they don't do a post-June 1. So my issue with any concept of Danielle Hunter, which is now off the board with Leonard Floyd coming in, and this, I think, highlights this point thoroughly, they need to spread their money around, especially on the defensive line. Leonard Floyd cannot be the last. If he is the last, they are deeply screwed because, Jake, let me read off their defensive tackles. Javon Hargrave, Kalia Davis, T.Y. McGill, Ernest Brown, real person, played for the Rams. And Spencer Wagey? Wan?
Oh, yeah, North Dakota State, North Dakota State.
That's incredible that you know that. You are a true sicko.
Well, I know because he's one of those guys that Larry is the best, but he finds one guy who no one else has heard of, and he's like, "I love this guy."
Yeah.
And so Larry was talking him up to me in camp.
Okay.
Um,
Well, the
Spencer
Niners might need
got a
to
little
talk him up to the fan base here because he's in the running to be a starting defensive tackle on this team
Yep.
with the roster they
I
have
know.
now. I
Yeah,
mean,
I think, here's the thing. What I was thinking about when I see all this, once I saw Armstead get cut, I see all this investment in the interior offensive line, which by the way, I love that we're going to a full chunky boy, universe in the
yeah,
NFL. I
yeah,
just love that. But what you were talking about where you said in the draft, you're looking at, I think it was the Texas kid talking
sweat.
about defensive tackle and I'm like, yeah, I could see it. Maybe defensive tackle makes sense. Now it's like, yeah, that might be
They might have
it's
to.
defensive tackle, offensive tackle, corner, and defensive end is now like maybe a second, third round.
Mhm.
Like I think that's more like try and get a Mo Camara in like the third round, you know?
Well, you just want to get Mo Camara, but
Yeah, that's right.
the defensive end situation was looking pretty dire too. You add in Leonard Floyd, it's less dire. Nick Bosa, Leonard Floyd, Drake Jackson, Alex Barrett, who is just consistently around, must be a great vibes guy. Raymond Johnson the third. Do you know anything about Raymond Johnson the
No,
third, Jake?
come on. No
Really?
idea.
Yeah, that's.
I'm not convinced that's real.
I mean, it is. I pulled it off of multiple depth charts today.
Hmm.
Robert Beal, who they do like and could have a role on this team. Austin Bryant, who I know some people like, but I feel like those people are just trying too hard.
I mean,
And then
if he's your fifth defensive end, sure, go for it.
if you have a pretty good top four, which you don't, and then Sam. Oh boy, I've had multiple hours here to do this correctly, and it's still not going to come close. Okunonu.
Hmm.
He's not going to make the team. So the defensive end situation, yeah, okay. Now you got your bookends. You got Drake Jackson, who at this juncture is going to be called upon to be a third down rusher. You got Robert Beal, who is in theory the backup to both Floyd and Bosa on an every down
Yep.
basis, and maybe Austin Bryant. So you need another defensive end. You need a starting defensive tackle, a depth defensive tackle at the very least. And by the way, one of those guys has to be signed. You cannot go into a
Yep.
season
I think
with
it's going to be
being,
DJ Jones
yeah,
because
yeah,
he's on the wrong side of 30 at this point. Just like he hasn't looked the same. Again, you watch more of him than I did, but
yeah,
those guys that are just, you know, Mack trucks in the middle, they wear on their knees. And I think if you throw a few million at them, I think that's what they're going to do. But you need a gap plugger, a guy who can just hold up in the run game
yeah.
as your third defensive tackle.
Well, okay, let's talk about DJ Jones for a second because it wouldn't be a bad pickup if he's on the crazy cheap. I have no problem with that, right?
Right.
If he has to be your starting defensive tackle next to Javon Hargrave, I have a very hard time with that because they're very similar players. And I know that Jones
Yep.
fancies himself a run stopper and was a very solid, positive run stopper. I don't know if he was ever a lead or anything. He got paid probably more than he was worth, and the Niners were happy to let him go in that regard. But you think about the Niners system, what do they love in the draft? They love that broad jump. They love that burst off the line. That's the same thing that Hargrave brought him last year. Just crazy burst. One gap and go, split the gap, get in the backfield, make something happen. And they asked Armstead to kind of be like a two-gap player behind that.
Yeah.
Use your long arms and establish some sort, be a grizzly bear in the middle. And they needed that. He couldn't do it. And so when Hargrave loses his burst, and you don't have Armstead's just not built to play that way. He's probably better as a defensive end. He wasn't that good of a defensive end. Bringing in DJ Jones, I think, as a backup to Javon Hargrave makes sense. That makes sense to me.
Yep.
But as the guy next to him, that seems very porous against the run. Personal opinion. Hope I'm wrong about that. Now, if you bring in a Mr. Sweat from Texas, we have a different conversation. But
Right.
listen, the Niners tried this game before. Let's not forget with Javon Kinlaw saying, "Hey, we'll just go out and draft a guy in the first round, and he'll replace our All-Pro caliber
Right.
defensive tackle." Didn't work out.
But that's the only hesitation I have with that approach is it's not that it's illogical. It's just is how much scar tissue is there from that move.
Yeah,
Like how
yeah.
scarred are they by, not total mostly whiffing, I would say is fair to say on
Well,
Kinlaw.
they didn't pick up his fifth-year option, and they're not going to
Yep.
re-sign him. So yeah,
Yep.
it's a whiff.
And you trade away to DeForest Buckner. The only way you can argue here's the thing about that move, if they didn't do
Mhm.
it, they probably don't get Ayuk. Remember?
True.
They traded down Tristan Wirfs, went to the Bucks. So
Yeah. I don't know
that
if we
came
want
out
to
of
do
it.
the full butterfly effect on that one, but
Right.
regardless,
Right.
in the span of 24 hours, I think we went from, oh, you can augment and you can mix and match, and you looked at the spots where they might need somebody. It's like, oh, you could sign the best cornerback, you could sign the best defensive end, you can sign another safety if you wanted to, or two. You can get a will linebacker. You can go out and get a true number two tight end. You can easily resign Ayuk, which is still the case. And then as soon as you lose Armstead, it just becomes you need to put your money on the defensive line or you're
Yep.
going to die. And I think that just leaves a lot of holes open on those other
Yep.
spots because those other spots were important. People were talking about bringing in a top level guard. Well, not at these prices, not at
No.
$20 million. What did Hunt got $20 million a year? I know that a lot of these contracts are fake, but like even in fake money, that's preposterous.
Yep. No, here's the
So,
thing. It feels like the Mozgov summer, right? The cap explodes
yes,
more than what was expecting. People are like, what are we gonna do? We're gonna pay Timofey Mozgov $20 million a
that's right.
year.
I
And it
made
and
that
it's not to
exact
that
same comment.
extent.
It's 2016 NBA all over again. LeBron
Right.
and Chris Paul failed to smooth out the cap, and here we are. Um, but it leaves another that leaves the issue. We have inflation. We've been dealing with inflation in the real world, and now we're dealing with it in the NFL, which is everybody has the money to sign somebody, and everybody's looking and saying, okay, where are gaps? And they're just throwing more money than they probably should at problems that they have. And the 49ers have maybe not big macro problems outside of DT now that Leonard Floyd's in, but they got problems. They got
Yep.
issues. And 11 draft picks, how many of those do you really trust are going to fix your issues? By the way, for this year, it puts an extra emphasis on the draft if things stand that this year you have to get not just your first round pick has to be an every down kind of player, but all of your top 100 picks. I think they have 3 or 4. They all have to
Yeah, I
have
think
an
I think
immediate
it's
role.
4.
Yeah, they have to have like a clear role. You can't miss on any of those guys. And you got to hit with a couple guys in the late rounds. And the Niners track record is pretty clear that that's not going to
Wow, your
happen.
Chicago just came out so hard there on the
What I say?
track record.
Yeah, Chicago track
I
record right there.
I
By
that
the
was
way,
that
they're
was
going
a
to go move down by
beautiful,
the lake.
beautiful thing.
Yeah.
By the way, Chicago Bears, paying for running backs, uh,
Brutal.
just they're like, "We don't have anything, so we might as well go mad and just pay a running back $8 million a year to be mediocre."
Meanwhile, Saquon Barkley's out here getting paid by the Eagles. As long as our good friend Nick Sirianni is around, I don't really care about that. A guy who we got some stuff live and happening before we get into some other targets here. Mo Hurst. Yeah, you know what? Shit, y'all can just see what we're looking at. Mo Hurst is signing with Cleveland. It's a 1-year deal worth $3.2 million. That was a
It's
legitimate option.
it's funny how Mo Hurst, as soon as he couldn't be healthy for 2 years with the 49ers,
Yeah.
they tried to wait, and then he goes to Cleveland and he looks like himself again.
Yeah, that's how that goes. And I thought that was a real option.
Yep.
Danielle Hunter's still on the board. I don't think cost wise is going to be even close to viable unless they want to redo. They restructured Fred Warner. That ain't going to get you enough money to get Danielle Hunter. So I think D end at the high end or even middle class is off the board. Greg
Yep.
Gaines would have been a nice option. He's going back to the Bucks for 3.5. Yeah, sorry, it is terrible content just scrolling through, but
I
Grover
love it.
Stewart is one I wanted to talk about. So some defensive
Yeah.
tackle targets. DJ Reader from the Cincinnati Bengals, big boy, and could be that 2-gap guy that they wanted Armstead to be.
Mhm.
If Grover Stewart, who I think is a lesser player than DJ Reader, is getting 3 years and $39 million, the Niners can't afford DJ Reader either. So that's fun. And then I have only 2 other names. I'm just throwing these at you now. It's not fair. I didn't give you any prep on this.
No, I love it.
Daquan Jones, who I really liked
Oh,
last
no,
year.
dude, he was when he went down, the Bills fell apart.
That's
Like,
right.
and he came back at the end of the year, and they sort of like even losing Milano, like sort of had a chance. But like Daquan Jones was for a while the best player on the Bills defense last year.
I'd like to think that he'd get a pillow contract. Just needs a year, goes out, establishes himself. Maybe the Niners could be that team for him. You said DJ Jones. We're getting DJ Reader, DJ Jones, Daquan Jones. It's all mixing and matching 8s and 7s. DJ Jones makes some sense. He still has to get cut. I would like everyone to note.
Right.
So there's that. By the way, the Niners can't touch any of that Eric Armstead money, any of the possible savings until after June 1st, unless they
Right.
want to do a dumb thing, which they shouldn't. That's it. I mean, honestly, like I had a list of 8 guys at defensive tackle that they could go out and get, and it's Daquan Jones and DJ Reader left. That's it. That's not great.
It's not great. It's not great.
So we're gonna really be grinding some defensive tackle draft stuff.
Which honestly, thank God, because there's nothing better than just watching a beefy boy up in the middle just trying to, and it's funny because some guys like Sweat, I don't think tested all that well.
No,
But that's one of those
defensive tackle,
positions
I
where
don't
it's
worry
like,
about that too much.
right. You just need to be able to get leverage, hold up, especially if you're going to be run first. And it's funny because with Kinlaw, it was like, well, you need a defensive tackle who can be a pass rusher.
Yeah.
Right. And that's sort of the thesis. And now it's like, okay, you need a guy who can just base level defend the run and hope Hargrave can get back to sort of what he was and go be the pass rusher. Because at the start of the year, Hargrave was fantastic.
Yeah.
He had that hamstring injury. You talked to him at the Super Bowl about that.
Mhm.
If he can get back to what he was and they can get a gap plugging run stuffer and they're both healthy, that's, you can figure the rest of it out.
Yeah, but when Bilal Nichols is getting 3 years and $21 million, I'm not sure you're going to be able to get one of those in free agency. Bilal Nichols. 3 years, $27 million a year for Bilal Nichols. Robert Hunt, 5 years, $100 million at guard. That was a fun little fairy tale dream that people told themselves. This report here from Mike Rothstein. Atlanta, I mean, their biggest move of the day. There was nothing else that they did today at all.
For sure.
Signed Charlie Warner to a 3-year deal worth $12 million. Which, of course, means that he
stood on top of the table. Kirk Cousins went down to Atlanta. He's like, I need one thing, and it's not money.
No.
Charlie Warner, baby. It's Charlie Warner.
They gave him the money anyway.
Yeah.
Man,
that guy, no one is a better business quarterback than Kirk Cousins. Unbelievable.
The bag man. Unreal. And I brought this up on my stream earlier. Like, the Niners have to be prudent and a bit concerned here. Like, as much as the cap went up big, I think it will go up big next year. I think it'll go up big after that. I think the NFL is a money-making juggernaut that will never be stopped. Happy to find out if I'm wrong. I don't think I am. But the Niners at some point are going to have to pay Brock Purdy. And I don't think that they're going to get some extent. They might work it out before next year, but he's on for 1.0, something like that, 1.1 and 1.25. The hundreds of thousands of dollars don't matter because he makes less than 1% of the salary cap. Then he will get paid, in theory, if he is still the Brock Purdy that we saw the year before and in this past season.
And just to be clear, if it's anywhere near that, it's going to be $40 million plus a year. Like,
there's no reason to think that Brock Purdy shouldn't get everything that Kirk Cousins has gotten.
Like, that's just what the market is for a quarterback.
So,
like,
but Danielle Hunter would have been fun. Hey, look at that. The Raiders added Gardner Minshew. So my man Alex Simon, who texted me this saying, what about Gardner Minshew? And I do want to get into the backup quarterback.
Yeah, now that Mac Jones is off the board.
I thought that was a huge missed opportunity.
I did too. And it's the same way I felt about Ezra Cleveland mid-season. That trade, that guard from Minnesota got traded. And
totally.
I think he went to Jacksonville. And then he just got a huge contract this offseason.
I am pushing against this feeling of anxiety and just like general impatience because today is not the day you have to put in your 53-man roster. There's a lot of time left, and this is a team that still needs to fill a lot of holes. And I don't think that a lot of these guys had anything to do with anything that the Niners were going to do. But it does feel like there's a lot of missed opportunities out there. Even not to say overpay, but like a Mo Hurst, that
Right.
feels like a missed opportunity. Gardner Minshew, I don't think was ever coming, but not going with Brandon Allen as your number 2 when you of all teams should know that you need
Yep.
3 quarterbacks. And I guess they'll draft some kid on day 3 and hope it works out, which maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. You might have to find out the hard way. I'm not sure Brandon Allen's going to win you a 4-game
Right.
stretch if Brock Purdy
And
gets
you
a
probably
concussion in
need
October.
4 arms going into camp
Yeah.
anyway. So, yeah, I'm with you. It's like there is that feeling, right? There's that sense of it's not like they've whiffed. They got Leonard Floyd,
Oh,
uh,
yes, it's a good pickup.
but like there's a lot of sneaky needs, and as this team is getting older and older, it's like the draft starts to loom larger and larger. Like you kind of have to hit on a huge number of these picks to get any sort of value for these positions. Like they're starting to get priced out of some of these mid-level players that were on the board and either they missed them or it's just not the range they're willing to go to. And the draft suddenly becomes like you're basically stealing value. And it's always been like that if you get it right, but
And it's for every team.
as these numbers start to go up, the draft is like it's cheating. And you have to get those picks. Um, and you can't be drafting running backs in the 3rd round every single year, whiffing on a tight end, which, hey, maybe Cam Latu does something. I'm not going to talk about him right now.
All right. So here's what we know about Leonard Floyd. PFF doesn't like him very much. That's fine.
Well,
Not PFF doesn't have to like everybody, and there's a lot of guys that I like that PFF doesn't like, and there's a lot of guys that I hate that PFF loves. Like I like PFF as a general take a look
right.
and see, but like this is pretty rough. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, I bet it feels like this is going to be a 1+1 type deal. 2 years, 20.
Yeah.
Basically, he's probably got a few million guaranteed that second year. And then if he plays well, sure, we'll pick it up. But probably it's a 1-year deal. Oddly enough, it's kind of the deal that they didn't give to Amenahu last
Right.
offseason. I'm pretty sure it's the same price. I remember Amenahu getting like 10 million, which is like not just if you were to compare the two, would you rather have Amenahu obviously tore his ACL, but was playing pretty well for the Chiefs, age 27. Yeah, like a $10.9 million cap hit this year. Like
There's a little something extra with the Amenahu thing. It should be noted. Henry N coming in.
correct,
Leonard Floyd here to
correct.
help explain Brandon Staley's defense. Great call. Great call.
Also love that car.
BS Wintech. Can Floyd play the run, or is he a 3rd down pass rusher? Let's go back to the PFF page, ladies and gentlemen. No, he can't play the run. He did at one point in Chicago. You can see it down here
Right.
if you're looking on a big enough screen. But the last 2 years, not so much. And this is not a guy who has crazy bursts. So I'm fascinated to actually see where he fits in. I think at this
Yeah.
point, the positive is that he is a human body with NFL experience. Like,
Right.
I don't
Right.
mean
That
to
counts.
be
That counts.
glib or crass or anything, but like, I would like to repeat their depth chart at defensive end. Nick Bosa, Leonard Floyd, Drake Jackson, who they kind of hate, Alex Barrett, who's just sort of around all the time, Raymond Johnson III, who we don't know, Robert Beal, who is something. I like.
He's a player, I think.
I like the
I'm not saying
possibility
he's a
for Robert.
dude, but he can do something.
And then there's Austin Bryant, who is kind of a camp body, practice squad guy. Call him up if you really need somebody.
Like if he has a really good camp, like yeah, he could maybe make the roster.
That's cool. I think Clee Farrell has to be a very high target still, because I
Yes.
think you need to just establish very clearly a 1st and 2nd down guy who can set the edge and handle
Right.
the run. Especially if you don't have that run stopper in the middle. And maybe that's putting too much on Clee Farrell. Probably is. But I don't think Leonard Floyd's probably out there to stand up, come in on third down, and we'll see what happens. And I
Right.
don't know if he even makes the team, all things considered, at $10 million a year. And I think that a lot of people would look and say, hey, $10 million, that's a lot of money. Of course, he's going to make the team. I mean, he'll make the team. But that's the price. This is the way the inflation works. Henry N checking in again. I mean, have you heard anything about DeForest Buckner coming back? I hear this all the time, but I haven't heard
Mhm.
anything legitimate. Sorry to cut your face off there, Jake.
You're good.
It is that time of
I've
year.
no, it's something where it's like to do the due diligence. Yeah, of course. Like if you can get DeForest Buckner back, great. But I don't know. Like they left a pretty sour taste in his mouth.
Yeah.
Don't like how I phrase that. Um,
Hey, gotta do what you gotta
but
do.
I think if you could get DeForest Buckner, great. But I just have a hard time seeing it that way. And like being willing to make that move. I don't know. Do you think that's something that they would legitimately consider?
No, I would love to be on over the cap right now, but I think it crashed. So that's
Yep.
not great.
Yeah, I
Um,
was just doing the exact same thing.
so now we're on Spo track, which sucks. Hate Spo track.
Yep.
OTC for life.
They just
Uh,
steal everything. They rip everybody off.
yeah. I mean, I don't. What am I even looking at here? Can we do the math on this? um,
I don't know if anyone can see that number, but
I don't know what it would even cost to trade. It's probably too much money. It's just probably too much money. He's a $20 million player, and he's got a massive cap hit this season. I suppose the Colts could hold on to that. I don't see why they would. I think the Colts are going to try to compete this year. I think if you're in the AFC South, you
yep.
should be trying to compete every year. The AFC South is gettable, and they got Anthony Richardson coming back. I think.
Yeah.
Listen, it's not to say that
And in the
DeForest
way
Buckner won't be traded,
yeah,
but
right.
I don't think
I
he's
just
coming to
think
the
with the
Niners.
way the league is evolving, the amount of money that's going in on the interior on both sides of the ball, like if you're the Colts, you're just gonna be like, we have this great player last year of a deal who honestly at 20 million a year, that's a great price,
Yeah,
even at age 30. Like I just don't understand. And maybe they do. Maybe I'm out of the loop here, and the Colts have been wanting to deal him. I just think with the way the league is moving and teams investing in the interior of the offensive line, you've got to have a great defensive tackle or at least guys who are capable.
yeah.
So I don't know why they deal him. If they do, they're going to have to take some of that money. And why would you do that? At that point, just keep him. So
Yeah, I think they run it out, and I think that if the Niners are going to spend a lot of money, and by the way, draft capital, which they have, don't get me wrong, they have it, but
you do.
they'd still be spending it. They'd be better just investing the money in free agency or investing the money in draft capital. Take 3 spins at the roulette wheel at the draft and hope you get one. So it, things aren't going great right now. It might look very different come Wednesday,
Right.
but things aren't going great right now. And again, just go over kind of their needs. Offensive line is still very much a question mark. I think that with McKivitz getting that extension, they're going to ride with him at right tackle, at least to start the year. So put him in Penn.
Right.
You could have upgraded at tackle. They probably won't now. You could have upgraded at center. They probably won't now. I don't think that they would, because again, now the glaring holes are starting defensive tackle, and you need to fill those holes before you can approach anything else in the draft or anything else in free agency. You slide in Leonard Floyd. He's already slid in. Now they don't think very much of him either. On our lads, they got him behind Chase Young, who doesn't exist on this team. But okay, there's something there, and you could do a whole lot worse than what the Niners did with Chase Young and Randy Gregory and a little bit of
Right.
Beal late in the season. I mean, maybe Leonard Floyd can do that.
I think what will be really interesting to watch from them, because we've talked about this, the way Brock Purdy's played, the nexus can change where you go from being a team that almost always invests on the defensive side of the ball,
Hmm.
and they've drafted well on offense with Ayuk and Debo.
Yeah.
But do they go tackle in the draft? Do they go offensive line in the draft? Or do they see these prices and say, okay, well, we actually can't afford all of the depth that we were hoping to get at defensive end, defensive tackle, maybe even linebacker, and feel that that's a more pressing need at corner too. Like they can't get a guy at corner, say, and they think that's more pressing. I think that'll be interesting to see how that plays out. I still think though that the way Purdy played, I feel like they gave us signs that they're going to want to get some guys around Purdy. That's what sort of cost them in the Super Bowl, right?
True.
Is that they had offensive line protection breakdowns, and some of that's schematic, but a lot of that is personnel. And Burford and like McKivitz played okay, and then he also got destroyed
Mhm.
at times by George Karlaftis, and Burford basically was unplayable. So I still think that is going to be a major priority for them, although probably in the draft more than free agency at this point.
Let's talk about tight end for a second. They do have 3 additional guys under contract, but they lose Charlie Warner today, which just given the context isn't great. I mean, it would have been nice to have that
Yep.
number 3 established. Um, Cameron Latu, who you are no fan of, and I think for good
Listen.
reason,
Yep. I
and then
just I
Braden
just don't see
Willis,
it.
who
Yep.
they're going to have to invest at tight end. I don't know. Does anybody on the free agent market stand out to you at tight end?
Not really, man. I mean, it's like here's the thing about if Charlie Warner's getting 4 million, like Colby Parkinson,
He
a
got
guy who went
paid.
to Stanford who is like decent, for the Seahawks. I think the Rams gave him 8 million a year. Like the market just doesn't make sense to me. And they think they're getting like a great blocking tight end, which is just not the case. I don't know. I think it's tough to try and go out there and get like you could argue. I could talk about Michael Pruitt for years. We can go back to that route.
You love you some me Cole Pruitt. It's your Cole Pruitt.
It's just there have been guys out there like Chris Manhertz is always one of those guys where it's just
Mhm.
solid blocking tight end. You pay him 2 million a year, and he's just fine. I
Yeah.
think there's something to that. But off the top of my head, like there's not a lot of tight ends on the market that get me excited. And I just think whenever I've looked at free agency and I've thought, okay, maybe the Niners can go get somebody to be a number 2 to Kittle, I just think the amount of money they pay to Kittle makes that prohibitive, that they just
True.
don't want to spend anything more than a couple million on a tight end, given the other needs that they have, and would rather go in the draft. So, even if I were to say, yeah, like go out and get a number 2, pay him 5 million a year, I just have a hard time seeing them doing that.
The Rams, I think, have done a pretty nice job um, in free agency in general. Alex Simon checking in.
I love
I
it.
don't think. Go ahead, Jake.
Yeah, I think it's something where it's interesting in the NFL how markets work, right? Because there's such a clear delineation where like it was the tight end market that went up a couple years ago.
Mhm.
It really is cyclical. Like every few years, it's just a certain group. They're like, okay, now it's time to start paying this group more. Running backs are never going to get there, but it's nice to see the interior of the offensive line, almost like teams realized, oh God, we should probably not let giant, monstrous humans run after our quarterbacks
Yeah.
unabated up the middle, and also be able to establish a run run some power stuff. So I just think it's funny because it's this pass happy league, and it sort of is like it's kind of a throwback in my opinion to getting chunky boys, in the trenches, good old large trench warfare. So what do you think about it?
I think my question is it just the chunky boys getting this, or is it everybody getting paid just out of their gourd
Right.
because it's the Mozgov summer all over again? Um, I think
I
it's
think it's
probably more
both.
the latter.
I
And
think it's a
listen,
little bit of both.
there is a market clearly for the big boys. It was a good
Yep.
market for them. Good year to be a free agent, I think is the overall takeaway
I
I
will
have.
say, and assuming he isn't signed elsewhere,
Yeah,
if you want one name aside from Manhurts, which I gave you as a tight end too,
yeah.
Robert Tanyan. I believe him
Oh,
and
yeah,
Kittle are
tackle.
cousins. Um, yeah, I don't know what his status is or what his market looks like. I know he's had injuries, but if you want a tight end two name, that's one for you.
That's a viable option. He played for the Bears last year. They had like 19 tight ends, so that was really cool of them. They kept half the league employed. Doesn't seem as if he signed anywhere. So is he a free agent this year?
Yep, it
Okay,
appears that way. I
that's
mean,
a good
again,
option. I
again,
mean, how do
over
you
the
feel
cap
about
is.
Braden Willis as a tight end 3?
I wanted to see more of it. So I remember watching him in camp and I kind of liked what I saw.
Yeah.
Of course, he came in the Super Bowl and immediately held and ruined a play.
Wasn't good.
Uh,
It was the NFC
Devastating.
Championship game, right?
Oh, yeah. Yep.
They would
I think
not
you're
let
right
him on the
about
field
that.
for the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
Regardless.
Although, no, I think he was on the field in the Super Bowl
Well,
and
there's
got
only
a
one way to
holding
find
call,
out,
and then
isn't there?
Kittle came in the next play.
Okay.
Maybe I'm wrong on that.
Well, no, I'm going to NFL Jesus, and we'll find out. You keep talking.
Love that. But yeah, I think it's I just didn't see enough out of him. Like I didn't get to see him on the field all that much. But I like the flexibility he had. Like as a pass catcher, I thought this guy actually might have some potential to be a tight end too. Again, I need to see more in camp and on the field. But if he's your third tight end, I'm totally fine with that.
Okay. We're just going to show everyone how wrong I was. There it is. Braden Willis on the field, 4 snaps on offense in the Super Bowl.
Yeah, Kittle. I think Kittle had the arm thing,
Oh, that's right.
and that was like a weird thing where he came in the next play right after the hold, and it was like, why didn't they just get Kittle in a play before or call a timeout? I think it was
Well,
a
he went to the
situation where they
locker
could have
room and
burned one.
shit. It was that game was out of control. I
Yeah,
refuse
the
to
game
watch
was a
it
mess.
back, just on the principle of it was a hot mess. But yeah, okay. I mean, where do we go from here, Jake? What's next? How do we piece this thing together? What's the move you want to see the Niners make next?
If I'm the Niners, I think finding a linebacker who can play next to Fred Warner and you don't have night sweats about their ability to just play in the defense, understand what the scheme is, and then maybe Dre Greenlaw comes back, later in the season, and you have 3 great linebackers. And maybe this is just Oren Burks, but I think as all these positions are getting paid, if you're a little proactive there, maybe there's a deal to be made, or it's a market that's just waiting for the first one to go, and then that sets the market for this offseason. But that's a position I think if you don't know or have confidence in your second linebacker, that's going to wear. And that was their whole thesis going into this offseason with their defensive coordinator approach, right? It was
Right.
tying the linebackers to the safeties, to the front. And if you don't have one who understands the scheme, who has the range to go sideline to sideline, who can play coverage remotely well, you kind of ask a ton out of your linebackers. So I think that's a position I would be proactive in. And it depends what they think of Greenlaw. Like, do they think he's going to come back in October and be
I
75%
don't
of
know how they can
himself?
make a call on that anytime
Right.
soon.
But you kind of have to. It kind of dictates your approach. Are you saying like, okay, he's going to get back Levante David? How old is Levante David?
Levante David, I just had it up here. I'm sorry. Levante David is 34 years old. That snuck up on
Timeless.
me.
I mean,
He's
what's crazy is like he's still been insanely productive.
had
Like
more than
he's
100
he's a
tackles in 6 out of the
throwback.
last 7 seasons.
That's honestly terrifying for his long-term health. But if you're the 49ers, that's kind of enticing. I mean, what would he cost? 8 million for a year, something like that.
That's
At that
probably
point,
right.
just go Aziz.
I mean, yeah, it's probably right. Did we mention Sheldon Rankins? Sheldon Rankins signed with anybody?
That's a
Look at
great
let
question.
y'all behind the
Here's the thing about defensive tackles: they all have names that sound similar, that sort
tackles.
of exemplify the beefiness of both their character and their play.
Sheldon
Uh,
Rankins looks like he's available, baby.
there's
He's big.
also he's not going to be in the 49ers market, but Foley Fatukasi, used to play for
I'm
the
gonna
Jets.
try to
Like
search that.
he's already signed with the Texans. So
Yeah,
whenever a player that you mentioned for the 49ers signs with the Texans, uh, Rams, or Dolphins,
right.
that means we were right.
Yeah, or Jets, but not so
Jets,
much the Jets.
not so
Here's
much.
a name, Kenny Moore the second.
Oh yeah,
Now he'd be a nickel, and he's really, really, really good at nickel. I would like to note that the Niners have a really good nickel already in Diamador Lenore, but I do feel like this might be an opportunity for them to do a little cost savings in the sense of, hey, we like Lenore on the outside too. We're going to play him there. And then we're going to put more in the slot because it's easier to sign, or it's cheaper, I should say, to sign a slot corner which is an oxymoron, than it is to sign an outside corner, even in this market, probably especially in this market. So if you feel good about Lenore on the outside, which does take him away from the ball, probably
Yep.
does diminish his upside a little bit, but maybe raises his floor a smidge because I don't know if he's physically built to do that slot for a long
I
time.
don't hate that at all. It's also like you're right. Like the slot market is never going to be what the outside corner market is.
It's like
So like
safety.
right, Lenore can play outside. He also I think got better as the year went on.
Yeah.
Ambry Thomas is not good, but like if he's your backup and then you go draft another corner, you're going to feel a lot
Or
better
you like
about that if
Luger.
you go out and get a guy who can actually play nickel. Now, they might be a little bit scarred by signing Isaiah Oliver and him being just completely incapable of playing the position, but
Yeah.
that also felt like a Steve Wilkes signing um, and was sort of out of character with like he was a bigger nickel, like it was sort of like, oh, this guy profiles a little differently than what the Niners usually ask of their
It was like
nickels.
that big 3 safety look they wanted to go to,
Right, and they never did.
probably because it's outdated and was going to get them burned. And Isaiah Oliver was definitely not the guy to make it happen. DJ Reader is still. I mean, I
Yep.
I think that's got to be target number one. It's all very foolhardy to be talking about this when stuff is just happening nonstop. But Leonard Floyd is in. Super Bowl, here the Niners come. Make your tickets for New Orleans. Book them right now. Just going through the list here. See, you can do it with me. Andrew Van Ginkel, I thought would have been an awesome option. He goes for $10 million a year. So he went for the Leonard Floyd contract. I thought he's a great run stopper and can give you a little something as a pass rusher. I thought he would be a really solid player, maybe an upgrade from Clee Farrell. But
Also, how ridiculous is this? The way free agency works, where it's all of this is pretty much dictated at the combine,
totally.
and then teams are randomly making cuts like leading up to when free agency actually starts on Wednesday, and like everyone's just like frantically reporting in this legal tampering window that it's like why are we even? It's just free agency starts today.
Yeah,
Um,
just say it
the whole
starts today.
thing is just so stupid, and I kind of love how chaotic it is, but man, it's dumb.
I didn't know that Jordan Brooks was a free agent. That's on me.
Yeah,
Now, I don't think they're going to get him because that's somebody who needs to start and play. I mean, it took a while for him to come through it with the Seahawks, but I thought he was really good.
yeah, you're right. No, he came on strong in the last couple years, I think. Um, yeah, but I think he's gonna get what 12, 15, something in that range. Like, I just don't think
Yeah.
Curtis Samuel
Now, again, a
as a
lot of
Debo
this is.
replacement,
I'm sorry.
as a Debo replacement,
Well, I think as a
the
Ray
Samuel swap.
McCloud replacement,
Mm,
who then is in theory the backup to a Debo Samuel, but I think he'll cost too much money.
yep,
Steven
but
Nelson, not the Dodgers announcer, would be a good option, and he can play the system. Aziz, how much would Aziz cost? Much.
I think the price is 7. I think it's gonna be like 7 a year.
And how much do you
It's
think is our man Alex Simon checked? Like, how much do you think Levante David I'm sorry, Devin White would cost?
it's
Well,
tough
Devin
because
White.
he did not have a good year last year, but I think Devin White probably what 10, 11, like just as a guy who can play linebacker and rush the passer.
I think
uh,
he did not have a good year last year. That's
right.
true. I'm shocked he's on the market. He's 26 years old. He's a dude. Bad year is what it is, but he's got to be a starter somewhere. I just can't
Yep.
imagine him wanting to come to San Francisco unless the Niners are like, we're done with Dre Greenlaw. You're our guy. Which, when you think about
I
all the
also I
places that
also
they
have
need to
trouble.
patch, like that's rough.
Yeah. I also have
That's
trouble imagining the Bucks letting both White and Levante David go. I mean, maybe it's a new regime and they let both go. But that's I mean,
but it
you lose
isn't.
both starting linebackers. It's kind of rough. Frankie Luvu, by the way, just scroll up to him. Like to me, if you're actually like, if you say
Didn't
I
he
don't care
lead
what
the
the
NFL
cost
in
is,
tackles?
yeah, no, dude, he's incredible. He's like my favorite player to have on fantasy football when you have one designated defensive player
I
because
forgot
he's
how much
like
of a
he
sicko
gets
you are.
sacks, PBUs, like he can play. He's super underrated. And he's obviously getting more attention, but like if you want to go out and you say, I don't care what the price is, I want to go get a linebacker who can play next to Fred Warner and be stellar. I would say go with Luvu. He's a great player.
Frankie Louvu. Okay. Any other names you
We
want to
took
talk
him.
about before we get out of here?
I mean, aside from Luvu, I just think. I mean, what positions haven't we covered? I mean, it's defensive tackle now that you need to figure out. Linebacker, you need an option. You need to decide whether you want to invest in a nickel, slide Lenore back
Mhm.
outside, or invest in an outside corner. I think they'd probably feel more comfortable going with an outside corner, but again, these
Let me
markets are
th-
crazy.
let me throw a name at you. Tre'Davious White.
Ooh, yes.
Now he
Yeah,
doesn't
what
tackle well,
yeah.
which is a problem, and he's coming off of a knee and Achilles injury. So Jason
Yeah,
Verrett
but sometimes they
2.0.
like that in their corners,
They
you
they
know?
just they love fragility. But probably get him cheap.
I mean, he was for a while a top 5 corner. At one point, arguably the best corner in the league. Am I wrong on that? Like
He was in the
he
conversation for
was
sure.
he was elite. Like it depends what the market is, but if you get but I think you're right. If you get a discount on him for that injury history for his age, like it's a really intriguing name. Yeah, granted he did have a 29.9 run defense grade, which is honestly impressive. Um
It's like,
that
why are
sounds
you
like
even there?
that's a grade where it's like you're not even trying to that's a business decision grade, you
Every
know?
single play.
Like you just don't want it. It's not that you can't. It's that you're actively deciding, "No, I'm not going to do this. Someone else can do it. Not me. Won't be me. I play corner. I cover guys."
I'm hell bent. If there's going to be any Buffalo Bill coming to San Francisco, coming to Santa Clara, it's got to be Daquan Jones. I mean,
Yeah.
a true
Dude,
nose
he's
tackle, one
he's
technique,
so
big boy,
so good.
6'4", 320, coming off of injuries. But when he was in, he was as good as any defensive tackle in the game. 1 year, name your price, all cash, we'll deliver it in a Brinks truck.
Why
Just
not, man?
come here and
Yeah,
stand next to Javon Hargrave and make him look good.
yeah, to close this out, like, as a reminder, so if you're the 49ers and you're saying, "Oh, man, these guys are so expensive." Don't you wanna win a Super Bowl? Like,
Yeah, fuck do you
who
care?
ca go pay. Like, choose what you're willing to really go after, and maybe it's a bunch of guys in the mid-range, instead of Feliciano, you add a better guard that you feel good about for 6 or 7 million. I don't even know what that looks like at this point. You add a
Mhm.
mid-range defensive tackle, linebacker, and you pay all of those guys combined, like 6, 7 million a year each. But I don't know. I think they've shown that they believe the way to move the needle is to get one big guy an offseason, and that they've been willing to do that. And I'm with you. I think Daquan Jones is one of the most underappreciated defensive tackles in the league and was a linchpin of that Bills defense. And they were not the same, even close to the same when he was out.
You seen anything about Jennings and a tender, second round tender?
I mean, I think they gave him the second round tender. Am I wrong on that? And then it's up to whoever else to match it. And maybe
Yeah,
maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it hasn't been given out, but or we were just talking about that with Larry. Oh yeah, Schefter. 24 seconds ago. Yeah. They
six
tendered.
$6.8 million.
Is that what it is? They gave him.
That's how that works. That's a
Let's
lot of
see.
money. I mean,
Sheesh.
the first round tender would have cost 7.3. I mean, might as well do that. Second round tender. I'll say this. I don't think anybody is going to offer a second round pick for Jaywan Jennings. No
Right.
offense. Good player. Probably a Super Bowl MVP had they won.
Right.
But
But he's one of those guys that like I think he just fits better with the Niners than with anybody else, right?
agreed. And there's going to be guys like that. Yeah, Codmus 3 coming in saying Grover Stewart is an excellent run defender. Hell yeah, he is. That's why the Colts just gave him 3 years and $39 million. He's a rich man. He can buy so many steroids now. It's going to be great for him. I again, and Grover Stewart, here, I'll just pull up a
Well, no,
photo.
that's what I was looking up. So that's the first round tender. If it's 6.8 million, they gave Juwan Jennings the first round tender.
No, I think it's second. Doesn't matter. We're parsing
Okay, yeah,
small.
the second. Okay, so the second round tender is 4.8, I believe.
Is it now?
Yeah, 4.9.
Yeah, I was looking at bad information then, I suppose.
Yeah, the first round tender is 6.8. Second is 4.89, and then it's 3 million for the right of first refusal. So 4.89, that's fine. But yeah, 7 would have been a little pricey.
I just want everybody to take into account here. This is Grover Stewart. When I talk about having a grizzly bear in the middle, that's what I'm talking about.
Yep.
This guy right here. So that's a missed opportunity. Now, probably too rich for their blood, no doubt about it. But that man looks like he does not care about his stats and that he wants to avenge his family, which was murdered by running backs. That's what that man appears. This is Hagrid holding the door. This is You Shall Not Pass.
You should turn that into a graphic novel.
Just defensive tackles holding it down.
Yeah, I'm down with that. It's also like I love defensive tackles so much that in Madden I just draft like 3 of them a year. It's just fun. Sometimes I'll go into Madden and I'll just become a team that only has defensive tackles. It's great.
You play too much Madden, man. Not gonna lie to you.
I don't. I'm not.
Like it's warping
Here's
your
the
head.
thing. I'm not actually playing Madden. I'm just simulating until I can get back to the draft every year.
So much worse. That's brutal. Okay, well, you're a true sicko, which we've established multiple times over. Right. Here's the deal. We're going to do this again on Wednesday. Maybe we'll have clarity by then. Apparently, that's when NFL free agency starts, Jake. Can you believe it? It starts on Wednesday. Nothing's happened at all today. Not legally, at least. No. You can legally tamper.
The fact that they've called it a legal tampering period is pretty awesome.
Just skip ahead. Just
call it what it is. Start it today.
Doesn't make any sense. The official league season doesn't start. Meanwhile, you got guys who are being cut, but not technically until June 1st.
Right.
It's like
right.
NFL has done better than any league in the history of mankind in turning the fact that it's middle of March and we can do a Niners live show.
I know.
Tells you a lot about how the NFL does their business, which is exceptionally. But also,
I know they've changed that time. Like it didn't used to feel like this.
No,
you know, was it the
this
last?
Is why the cap's going to keep going
years?
up and up and up.
Yep,
forever and ever. And maybe then they can get a Grover Stewart, or maybe Grover Stewart will be a $40 million player by the time we hits the market next. Okay, subscribe if you haven't. Or don't. It is your prerogative. But if you made it this far, I mean, what the hell are you waiting for?
Right. Commit. Just commit. You're a sicko. We're sickos. Just join us in this weird, sick life we're all living together.
There's no NFL defensive tackle inflation here. It's free 99 all day, every day here on YouTube. Thanks for watching on Twitter.
You, folks.
You jumped in and, yeah, shit. We'll do it again on Wednesday. Have a good one.